going to talk about the challenges that are being posed by the built environment. Built environment, as you know, is man-made environment. You're not talking about buildings alone, you're talking about bridges, you're talking about infrastructure development, you're talking about roads and the rest of it. The huge challenge before us. In fact, last 6 weeks, I've been traveling across the world. Initially, I went to Geneva to talk about traditional idioms in contemporary architecture. I went to Washington to speak about a process called greening the recovery. I came back and I was talking about crisis in Indian identity in architecture, Indian identity in architecture. And I was posing this question to the group of architects. It was a national meet of architects that was being convened at Chennai. And in a contemplative fashion, I asked this community, the fraternity of architects, just one question. Post-independence, it's almost 70 years after we got independence, have you done one building? Have you done one building which we can say that is an Indian building, rooted in Indian traditions and Indian traditional idioms? Have you produced, as a fraternity of architects, one building that we can proudly say as an Indian building? The buildings that you are seeing around in Trivandrum, and just looking at the local premises, Trivandrum, they're not really Indian architecture. They are remnants of Renaissance, reformist, colonial architecture. They're not Indian architecture per se. The only building, let me tell you this is the only building in and around Trivandrum which really talks about Indian traditional idiom is a palace in Padmanabhapuram. That's the epitome of India's vernacular residential architecture. So, coming back to the subject, India is facing a huge crisis. Kerala is facing a huge crisis in terms of built environment. Every day, when you look around, there are huge problems of waste management, problems of huge spurt in population, the problems that urbanization is bringing to our day-to-day life. And as responsible citizens of this country, can we just stare at it and leave? As responsible citizens of this country, can we stare at these challenges, say that it's none of my problem, it's their problem, none of our problem, it's the government to solve the issue, and stare at it and leave? No. No, not at all. Times are going to be very critical for us, for a third world country like India to survive. We have to be on our own. We have to be proud of our vernacular lineage. We have to be proud of our traditions. We have to be proud of our knowledge base. And we have huge answers for, what I call as huge crisis that's being brought by huge urbanization. Urbanization, the pace and intensity of urbanization is that something that goes beyond your comprehension. Really goes beyond your comprehension. I mean, like in 2030, India is going to talk about an urbanization amounting to 75%, which means 75% of Indian population is going to move to urban areas. We are going to move to cities. 75% of the population, we are talking about a population of 120 crores, 1,200 million, and 75% of that population is going to base in the urban areas of India. That's definitely going to develop the challenges that I'm not using the word problem. I'm using the word with a clear determination, challenge, because I believe that an emerging country, an emerging economy, emerging population, we can overcome all those things. I'm seeing it only as a challenge which can be overcome, which can be addressed by we people, the citizens of this country. Let me just, before I go into the crux of the problem, let me just take you along with me to two defining moments that actually define my own personal journey. Two defining moments of my career, which actually taught me very important lessons in how to manage not only urbanization, housing problem in this country. In 2011, that's the year when I got Padma Shri. Just before I got Padma Shri, there was a huge media attack on me. One of the local Malayalam channels, picked on me and launched a huge attack on me on very baseless grounds, citing very silly reasons and baseless grounds. The reasons were very obvious. They knew that I was being shortlisted for this award, and they wanted to stall that process, and that's why they actually started this tirade against me. Those days, actually, I was in Sri Lanka. The government of India has given me a huge project, 50,000 houses for the displaced Tamils to be rebuilt in the northwestern and northeastern provinces of Sri Lanka. The places which are very close to your memory, you must have read about these places several times in newspapers in those days. I'm talking about Mullai Thiv, where our Prabhakaran was killed, Petro Point, Betikola, Tungomala, and the rest of it, remnants of Jaffna and places like that. As the representative of Indian government, I was touring these places, looking at the lifestyles, looking at the landscape, looking at the cityscape, looking at the mindscapes and things like that. I was being led, in fact. One fine morning, I was asked to go to a place called Poondotam. Poondotam in our vernacular language means a beautiful garden. Till that moment, all along I had been very active in Sri Lanka right from 2005 when tsunami hit the Sri Lankan shore in 2004, December 26th. I have actually built more than 95,000 houses in and around Jaffna for the traumatized population affected by tsunami. So I was extremely familiar with those landscapes and mindscapes, and I was seeing only unhappy communities when I went back in 2011. Unhappy communities in northeastern and northwestern province of Sri Lanka. And the Sri Lankan government in Colombo didn't really want to help them. The Indian government had promised them 50,000 crores to address the issues of Tamil people, and I was given the mandate to build houses for them. So one day when I was called to look at this particular locality, Poondotam, I was dreaming about seeing some happy faces, smiles on the faces, because I was seeing only unhappy faces till then. And I went into the community and I got a shock of my life. Actually, can I call it a shack? I mean, dilapidated, hugely dilapidated human settlements, which actually reminded me of concentration camps that I saw in Austria and Germany. It reeked of death, it reeked of dirt, it reeked of helplessness of all these people. So I went in, and these people actually came out. The man who is going to give them houses is obviously a demigod to them. They can't differentiate between a person and a government. So when I went in, they took me for the person who is actually going to give them houses. They came in numbers, 15,000 of them. 15,000 people with names and dreams. Young children, young women, old men. 15 years they had been living in that shack. 15 years of civil war made them to shift to this particular shack, and they were living there for 15 years. I went in, and these people came out, it was raining. They still had this thing to sit around me in the open ground. Whenever I talk to people on the margins, poor people, whenever I talk to them, I make it a point to hold their hand and to sit with them, to know about their pulse. If I stand on a podium like this, they won't open out to me. Unless they open out to me, how can I build houses for them as an architect? I need to know about their lifestyles. I need to know about their metaphysical requirements, their lifestyle issues to enable me to build houses for them. That's how I've built houses all my life. Now, actually, as I was talking to Srikumar today morning, I got a huge invitation from Palestine. And the UN has given me a huge onerous task of rebuilding Palestine, reconstruction of Palestine. Palestine, as you know, evokes so many images in us. Dead bodies of young children and women, the bombarded areas. All these images are going to have an effect on my architecture. I'm going to rebuild lives. I'm not going to build them houses. I'm going to rebuild lives for all this bombarded population in Palestine. So likewise, when I went to this community in Sri Lanka, I sat with them. I couldn't speak a word of Tamil, so I took the help of an interpreter to communicate to them. And suddenly the army people came in. They asked me to leave the place. They said, it's a dialogue between governments, and I need not have to talk to these wretched people. I said, as an architect, as a socially rooted architect, I needed to talk to these people because they're strangers to me. I needed to know whether they need a puja room in their house or whether they need a place for niskaram and things like that. I needed to know that. So, but the army people refused to allow me to talk. They asked me to leave. They came in arms and I didn't have an option but to leave. Then this young girl came to me. I was actually wearing a long kurta kind of a thing. She came to me, she tucked at me this thing. The things that you can see, these are the best dresses that she could wear. A traumatized population, Tamil population in this particular crowd will know. January 15 is Pongal day for them. It's a day of festivities, start of a new year. With little dresses, whatever colorful dresses she had, the skirt and the blouse. She came to me with plaited, this hair and all. She came to me. And she gave me a bit of the jasmine garland. A bit of a jasmine. Obviously, it was torn from a picture, and she gave me a bit of that. I was actually perplexed at that moment. She said, Mama, Mami kirikete. That gift was for my wife. I didn't know what made her give me this gift. I want to give something back to her. Normally, whenever I travel, I carry a bit of chocolate with me. Not because I want to give it to children. I'm acute diabetic, so if my sugar level falls down, I depend on this bit of chocolate. So I was carrying, normally I used to carry, but that day, unfortunately, I didn't have even that bit of chocolate. This girl came to me, and I knew that she was trying to bribe me by giving me this little bit of garland. And I asked her, Mole, what can I do for you? And she said in her vernacular language, Tamil, that she has a few dolls in her house, a few pavakuttigal dolls in her house. And she wanted me, as an architect, to provide some provision for the safekeep of those dolls. Pavakuttigal. If I remember right, in Tamil, she asked me, Pavakuttigal vekkan idam tharumo? Idam tharumo? That was what she asked. I said, then why should you give me this jasmine garland? Mama, you'll be seeing thousands of faces. It's a huge crowd that you're facing. But you shouldn't forget my face. When you design a building for me, I want you to remember my face. And you should, as an architect, give me a place to keep these little dots. By the time I could respond to her, the army took charge, they tracked her away. I really couldn't look back, because if I had looked back, I would have probably cried. It actually made my journey very difficult. Look at this girl. She's a true representative of emerging third world countries. In spite of all the difficulties, in spite of the sea of despair, sea of misery, she was still daring to dream. Don't you see it as a very positive sign? Young girl, 5-year-old girl, my granddaughter's age, she was daring to dream. This is the spirit of the third world. That is why I'm not very disturbed, I'm not disappointed. I'm always looking forward. This is yet another exercise that I did. Another huge exercise. Something that you cannot even comprehend. 15,000 tribals. 15,000 tribals being rehabilitated in India. On the outskirts of Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh border. You must have heard of the coal capital of India. Coal capital of India? Officers of this crowd should answer me. The coal capital of India? Singrauli. Singrauli is the coal capital of India. It's named as coal capital. One night, Mrs. Rajashree Billa called me up and she told me that she has got a huge project rehabilitating tribal people, and she couldn't believe, she couldn't trust anybody else other than me, because it's a dicey area. Everybody else had failed. Tatas had failed, JPs had failed, Reliance people came there and failed to rehabilitate these tribals. The entire area was actually being controlled by Naxalites, ultra-leftists. There was no rule there, no government there. The entire area was being controlled by extreme leftists. And she wanted a person who could talk to them and build something that could probably stick to their cultural vocabulary. So, like I was doing all my life, I went there, I said, I need to see the community, see the terrain, see the landscape, see the mindscape before I could do anything. So, I went in, but the collector, the people who were actually sending me, Hindalco people, one of the subsidiaries of Birla Group, they were not willing to take me to this community because they said it's a huge law and order issue, you're a Padma Shri awardee going there, and if you lose your life, it's our problem, so you can't risk your life and things like that. But I said, if ever I want to touch this project, I need to see these people. And luckily, by God's grace, I got the help of a tribal driver who was accompanying this group, and he said he will take me to these places. So, no roads, kacha roads, I went into the community, and the first sight that I saw, I went into the communities, I saw a tribal house, I asked my driver to stop there, and I went in, a beautiful old tribal house. The first sight I saw, as I went into the door, the thing that I saw virtually shocked me. A man and a fully grown goat, a fully grown animal, sleeping together, snoring away to glory. Just look at that scenario. When I went in, there was this, this charpai out there. Charpai, you must be familiar with North Indian charpai. Charpai out there, and this man, old tribal man, was sleeping, hugging a fully grown goat. Both of them were sleeping away to glory, snoring. And I was shocked. It's a huge cultural shock for me. I asked my driver, what is it? What is this that I'm seeing? He said, so it's a cultural sign. Lambadi tribals, if I remember right, the tribal group is Lambadi tribals. They have a huge issue. If they build a house, there is survey room for the cows and the calves and the goats and the animals. They have a room. They all have rooms with a view. Rooms with the door and a window, like our own rooms. They reserve a room in their houses for the animals. Although it was a cultural shock to me, I took it to my heart. I remembered it when I started designing my building. As I was driving back, I saw a few ladies crouching around a fire and trying to boil something. They were picking up flowers off the road, kacha road, no traffic. My jeep was the only thing that was coming in. Picking up a few flowers, and they were boiling it in water. I asked them what it is all about. They said, there are mahua flowers. They are boiling it to make a kind of brew, a kind of liquor that everybody in the community takes. Afternoon, children, ladies, they all take this brew and go to sleep. The entire community go to sleep. We actually, when you look at it, we might try to term it as immoral, drinking as immoral and, lack of character. But I thought it's a character of a community. People without tomorrows. We all have tomorrows, look at it. We have dreams to, live on. Tomorrow is another dream for us. Our children are growing up. We have a house to go back. We have a day of beckoning before us. Promotions, increments, transfers. There are a lot of promises, dreams for us. But people who don't dream about tomorrow, who don't have a tomorrow at all, who doesn't know what life holds for them tomorrow, for them it's a part of their life, part of their cultural milieu. I just saw that and I went back. I designed these buildings. And the big day came and the big bosses came, Rajashree Birla and the rest of the bureaucrats came in. They took me to Mumbai where I was supposed to present this project. Fortunately for me, the big bosses didn't understand one word of my presentation. I said, it has to be community-based. I said, it has to be a participatory process. When you're building for a Lombardy community person, unless it relates to their cultural milieu, how can you, as an architect, I don't have the mandate to design for them. But they gave me, the lady was magnanimous enough, she gave me an opportunity to go back and present it to the community. I wanted it. I wanted that project. I wanted that scheme. I wanted that planning process to be presented to the community because I needed the community approval. Without the community approval, nothing is possible in Synchrony. I knew about it. As a community, I've been practicing community architecture all my life. So I knew about the dynamics of that particular community. I went to the community. Look at me, a person who couldn't speak much of Hindi, only a few words in Hindi. And I was talking to people who could only understand Hindi, who couldn't write, illiterate. You know, thousands of people were there. 15,000 houses will mean a population of nearly 75,000 people. And the people who were controlling them were people, bare-chested people, you know, having garlands of bullets around them, holding, gun-wielding people, holding the community. So I went into the community. I had a huge model with me. I started explaining about the dynamics of this particular design. I said, with my broken Hindi, I said, this is the place to sleep, this is the place for you to eat, this is the place for you to eat food with your family members and things like that. And suddenly one man stood up and asked me in chaste Hindi, he asked me, हमारा जानवरों के लिए जगह कहाँ है? You know, a man who was really frightening me with such frightening proportions, tall, with a mustache and all. He was asking me, with a gun-wielding person, हमारा जानवरों के लिए जगह कहाँ है? With pride, with happiness, I told him, यहाँ है. I lifted the cap of my model, and in one of my rooms, I had a small model of a cow and a calf sleeping peacefully. That particular moment, I won the battle. I won the battle. They applauded. Probably that was the only expression of approval for them. They couldn't say yes to that, but they applauded. Applause meant approval to my project. And then I went on building. I did not only houses, 15,000 houses, the most sensitive area of India. You must have heard of tribal rehabilitation in Tehri. You must have heard of Narmada, Andol and this thing. Much trivial, these things. They were talking about 6,000 people being displaced. They were talking about displacing, rehabilitating 7,000 people in Tehri. They all made international news. My project, 15,000 people, probably the largest tribal rehabilitation work that has been ever undertaken in the history of India. That went without a whimper, without a complaint, just because of these kind of interventions. I went in and built lives for them. Not only houses, I built community places, I built markets, I built even crematoriums for them. For a decent exit, I created spaces for them. I created lakes for them, water scarce area. I created a lot of, sustainable development strategies I put in, and I created a huge lake and the rest of it. And finally the day of reckoning came. The inauguration, the Prime Minister, the Union Home Minister, the Urban Development Minister, they all came because it's Birla Group. It was a very successful project. They came in numbers. And they came and inaugurated and they went back. The Sarpanch of this particular community, he asked me to stay back. Because I was working with the Sarpanch, I was working with the communities all through this process. The process that took around 3 years. And they were feeding me left and right, feeding me. They were taking me to the schools. They were honoring me there. They took me to the primary health center, and they were just taking me around. And finally, they're waiting for the nightfall. The nightfall came. And then they said, "Sir, now you can go." I was led out of the mountains. And then I was asked to look back. They had lit up the whole mountain. They had lit up the whole mountain with what I call as charat, diyas. They had lit up the whole mountain. They said, it's a light salute to the creator of this particular project. Light salute, diya. I don't know whether Malayalis in this crowd, you must have seen a movie called Yatra. If I remember right, the movie's name was Yatra. Mammootty was jailed for a long time, and there was a dream sequence when Shobna was waiting for Mammootty to come back, where she lit up a whole mountain like this, waiting with diyas, waiting with lamps. And this was probably much more precious than my own Padma Shri, which I got later. Urbanization, the pace and intensity of urbanization is really staggering. I was just talking about India. The problem of this particular intensity of urbanization is something that we should address very carefully, because urbanization is happening in very, very poor countries. For instance, sub-Saharan Africa. I don't know, people can name some of the countries in the sub-Saharan Africa. Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia. These are probably the poorest countries in the world, where urbanization is happening to a degree of 95%. You look at parts of Africa, parts of Asia, Indonesia, for instance. The urbanization, the population's growth is something that you cannot comprehend. It goes beyond your comprehension. Jakarta is exploding. Jakarta is exploding. You must have gone to Bangkok. You know the kind of population Bangkok has. It's exploding. Cambodia, Laos, small countries. I went to Ulaanbaatar. Probably you have heard of Ulaanbaatar. Ulaanbaatar is the capital of Mongolia. Mongolia is a mountainous country. The urbanization that is happening in Mongolia is something that will open your eyes. This particular fact should really pain you, because Europe is talking about de-urbanization in a big way. The population growth is showing a reverse growth, whereas in Asia, it is showing a positive growth. Urbanization, as you know, in Trivandrum, for instance, brings in huge problems for us. Trivandrum, can anybody challenge if I make a statement? In Trivandrum city, there are 206 slums. Can you beat this point? In Trivandrum city alone, there are 206 slums. 206 slums where poor people, people without choices, people living on the margins live. 206 settlements like that in the city itself. Now, do we have to look down on these slums? Slums in Latin America, in South America, they are not islands of misery. Slums, we call them in Malayalam as cherigal. Slums is an island of misery, is an island of despair, is an island of filthy scenes, isn't it? That's when you just imagine a slum and you have this myriad images of filth, dirt, poor people clinging together, dirty, isn't it? In South America, slums are called islands of hope. They are not islands of misery, they are islands of hope. Why can't we see? I mean, these are some open-ended questions that I want to leave you, because you're all opinion leaders of the society. Is de-urbanization a way out? This was discussed in the last National Convention of Architects. People are continuously talking about de-urbanization, change of lifestyle. Look at India, where a lot of people still don't have access to shelter, still don't have access to potable water. And what are we talking about? They have a right for potable water. They have a right to live in this particular country, isn't it? So, is it a change of lifestyle that we need? Let's not look at the top 10% that make the opinion leaders of this. Let's not look at them. Let us look at the rest 90% of the people. Their problems and this thing. Is deurbanization an answer? I'm leaving it to you. It's an open-ended question that I'm leaving it to you. To me, it is not. The day we are talking about giving them portable water, giving them access to clean cooking space and a clean toilet, as far as an architect, these are two primary criteria: a clean cooking space and a clean toilet. Unless you give these things to the poorer section of society, what are you talking about? Are you talking about deurbanization? The world around, in fact, the UN has given out a charter, talk about two very important statements. One is adequate shelter, and the second one is talk about sustainable human settlement. This is the world agenda. This is the world agenda before us. India is a signatory to this. But unfortunately, just to make things very clear, let me tell you this. Indian planners and Indian government, you know the year when our 5-year plan started, scheme of 5-year plans, late 50s. That was when a blueprint of development, that is what 5-year plan is all about, a blueprint of development. It's a blueprint of our aspirations and dreams for a nation. That is what a 5-year plan is. It reflects our dreams and our aspirations and our goals and our tasks and things like that. We took more than 45 years. Indian planners and economists of this country took 45 years to come to the housing sector. By the time they realized that there's a huge problem in the housing sector, a lot of water has gone by. Probably India is self-sufficient in food. We are talking about food security everywhere. We have decent clothes to wear, but we have 60 million families in this country. 50 million, 6 crores, into 5, 30 crores. 30 crores out of 120 crores, which makes an easy 25% of the population without access to potable water, without access to clean cooking space, and without access to clean sanitation. These are three completely diverse words to you, isn't it? Poverty, environment, and development. Obviously, whatever we are seeing today, look at the newspapers, look at the premises around, these are all very contradictory to each other, isn't it? Poverty and environment, the relationship between environment and development, they all look very contradictory to each other. Can they work in synergy? Can you produce a kind of synergy between these items? This is a challenge before us. Can we take poverty as a very positive phenomenon? Can we? Instead of looking at it as a miserable thing, can you not take poverty as a very positive factor that can act as a catalyst? Can it not? When you look at Chengal Chola, for instance, when you look at mass education, literacy program, is it not the poverty that is propelling them forward? Is it not that phenomenon that is looking out for economic opportunity, looking out for better opportunities, life opportunities? Is it not that phenomenon that actually is acting as a catalyst agent? Are they in contradiction? Third world countries, we have to work in tandem. This is where, I've been working in Trivandrum for quite some time now. I've been trying to save some trees on the ways. People are talking about widening the roads. All the time, development means to us widening of roads. We want our vehicles to pass. Mind you, Trivandrum, look at the population statistics. Urban mobility of Trivandrum is 60% pedestrian. People are walking. People are walking to the workplace, people are walking to the educational institution, people are walking back to the hospitals, we are walking back to the hospital. Why are we not seeing them? Don't they need a decent way to pass? Don't they need a pedestrian way? I mean, when you look at the road development, we are doing tar from one end to the other end of the road. If you don't have a slipper to walk on, you will burn your feet. Why are we not looking at them? What is sustainability all about? If you talk about transportation, traffic, unless you address the problems of the pedestrians, I mean, I know the population is, the vehicle population, automobile population is exploding. I know that. I'm a citizen of this country. I know that there's a lot of problems on the road, looking at the automobile movements. But are we not looking at the pedestrians also? Can we try to develop a paradigm, a kind of a perspective, where we bring in all these actors to that is what is actually known as sustainability. We have to have trees, we have to have shades, we have to have places for the old people and disabled people to sit on the pavements, on the streets. When they go for a long walk, they need a place where they can sit down. The ladies, the pregnant ladies, the young children, disabled people, they all have a right to access, they have a right to way. Are we not denying it by getting the tar from one end to another? These are issues that, as I said, responsible citizens of this country, you should keep it in mind. The synergies will have to be worked out. Poverty is not a negative phenomenon. Like development is not a negative. We all want development, but we all want poverty to go. We all are talking about poverty alleviation all the time. We all want environment to be there. We all want cool houses. We want cool environment. We don't want these harsh summers to spoil us. So let us try to build bridges between these things. A bridge between poverty and development. How beautiful a concept is that? A bridge between poverty and development. A bridge between environment development and things like that. I've been talking about very bleak phases of architecture and urbanization. Can we just look at a completely different paradigm? A completely different paradigm. I was talking to some people in the morning. They were asking me, what is your main concept when you design houses? I said, I design a house where people should feel like going back to, like your wife, like your mother. You should get a feeling going back to that particular place. Houses should beckon you. Houses should call you like your mother. Come to my lap, come to me, come to my lap. That is the feeling a house should evoke, isn't it? That is purely a spiritual quality. Indian architecture, that is what I feel very bad about it. Indian architecture had all those, I'm leaving the belief part of it. Let us not mix it with the belief part of it. Let us leave it aside. I don't believe. I don't believe in all these, what I call as measurements and things. I don't believe in that. But I believe in spatial qualities of buildings. I believe in the space, that is architecture. When you look at the basic definition of architecture, it's conditioning of space for human comfort. That is how the basic definition of architecture goes. It's conditioning of space for human comfort. The space around us. The space around us. I'm actually reminded of Amrita Preetham. I'm sure some of you must have heard of this. A lady, a literary giant from Punjab, the lady writer, Amrita Preetham. She had two men in her life. One was Sahil Ludhianvi, who wrote this thing for Hindi films. Second man was Imtiaz. And somebody, fag end of her life, somebody asked her, what is the difference between Sahir and Imtiaz? Sahir is such a celebrity, world-renowned lyricist. And end of the day, why did you go to Imtiaz? She said, Sahir is like the sky. It's like an ocean, infinite, without boundaries, without perceptions, without scepter. It's a boundary. His love is beyond these kind of comprehensions. Imtiaz is like an umbrella to me. This is what architecture does. Architecture brings an agasham into a little chimney, what I call as a little room. And that is where you spend your evenings, you eat, you sleep, you tailor your next day and things like that. And Indian architecture special, this thing was, it was always rooted to time. It was always rooted to time. That is something that is very fascinating and amazing about Indian architecture. And it always talked about Shakti, energy and things like that. Energy means light. Energy means ventilation. Light and ventilation brings so much energy to human this thing. I just want you to look at two words. Music to us is something good for your ears, isn't it? Music that brings goodness to your ears is music. Something good to watch, good to see. That is what is known as Sugadarsham. Good to see. How better can you explain architecture? Architecture all along has so many determinants. We are talking about rhythm, we are talking about contrast, we are talking about balance, we are talking about unity, we are talking about endless qualities like that regarding architecture. But just look at this word, Sugadarsham. Good to see. When you say that it's Sugadarsham, it means peace, isn't it? You get that feeling. Ramya means, this is what we are all looking for when you design premises, when you design houses. A sense of well-being, a sense of goodness. You feel at peace. That is what is called Ramya. I was just looking at, we have a scale of, civil engineering background, if somebody has, we have a modern scale of architecture, which we call as Le Corbusier, which was initiated by Le Corbusier, mechanical this thing of scale. This was how the human settlements, the human habitations, everything was related to our body, our head, our hand, our legs, our heights, and our comfort, and things like that. You know, people continuously talk about strength of buildings, strength of materials, and things like that. People come to me asking for whether this brick is good enough, whether this concrete will stand the weight, and things like that. The civil engineers of this country, the architects of the country, they don't actually, inherit a sense of pressure. Architecture, civil engineering for that is a huge pleasurable trip. If you can internalize the pleasure which you derive out of your profession. Architecture has been a huge journey for me, huge journey. I've enjoyed every moment, every bit of the journey. Why I have enjoyed? I've internalized the facts. When I talk about compressive strength, for instance, when I talk about strength of a material, strength of one brick, you say it in some units, kilograms per centimeter square. So many kilograms per centimeter square. What does a centimeter square mean? Just look at a finger. 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. 2.54 centimeters make an inch. What is it? 1 centimeter square, one small bit of square, one small bit of your finger. And 30 kilos of weight on that. 30 kilos is a kind of weight I'm sure nobody in this particular can lift with one hand. It's very heavy. Probably very heavy iron trunk, very heavy big bag that you can lift. 30 kilos. That's the weight of one big bag. You can't probably lift it with one hand. Just imagine that particular pressure being applied on 1 centimeter square. And if you can internalize that dynamics, life becomes much easier. Your strength calculations, everything becomes much easier. Things like that. I just wanted you to imagine two things. This is how our images go. Just imagine a moonlit night, silence, a pond, a shimmering pond with a lotus in that. Just imagine. Drizzles, moonlit night, silence, and a beautiful lotus blooming in that shimmering river. Just imagine. 8 hours later, during the daytime, just imagine. On a squelched mud, dried patches, fallen down lotus, things like that. Indian architecture Indian built environment used to evoke such reactions as time went. I don't want to again go back to the grim, sad statics. The fact is that when you're looking at built environment, we simply don't have the resources to bridge this gap. And just talk about, suppose you're talking about this particular Akulam Panchayat, for instance. We want to build 500 houses. You need 5 lorry loads of, just say 5 lorry loads of stone for each building. 5 lorry loads into 1,000 will make it 5,000 lorry loads of stone just for this little village. Do we have the resources? We don't have the resources. We simply don't have the resources. What do? Don't you want to build houses? Yes, we do want to build houses. How do we build it? There is a way out. That's what we have been trying to promote all our years. Cost-effective, eco-friendly, and energy-efficient architecture. There are a lot of climatic changes as far as the urban fabric is concerned. You should realize that construction sector actually has got a huge role, a negative role to play in the coming days. Why I am telling you? Just look at pre-construction scenario. 22% of potable water, 22% of potable water in this country is being used in the pre-construction processes, wetting our concrete, mixing water to concrete, curing our plaster and things like that. 22% of potable water. In Kerala, all the 44 rivers are dying. All the 44 rivers are on the deathbed. And we are talking about 32% of this wood harvest. Mind you, post-operation, post-building, 60% of the electric consumption in this country is being used in the construction sector alone. Just go through this 32% of total energy, green gas houses, carbon dioxide emissions, and the rest of it. 1/3 of India's energy is being consumed by buildings. And what is the way out? People are always asking me, what is the way out? I know you don't have architects and civil engineers among us, but just to tell you, I just want to provoke your sensibilities by telling you, making a statement that mud is as good as any other building material around. My own office building, which is a 5-story building, is built purely out of mud. Why mud? It's a no-cost material. I don't call it a low-cost material. It's a no-cost material because you get it from your own ground. You dig it, you make bricks out of that and use it for your building. It's a no-cost material. It doesn't undergo any processes. That is why we call it a zero-energy material. It doesn't go through a process. Bricks gets burnt and you burn away a lot of energy. Mud doesn't go through a process. So it's a zero energy, this thing that you get. Are these determinants very critical for looking at a new vocabulary? Mud has got enough strength, it is durable, it's insulating. It is probably the best building material that's available in India for buildings. Mind you, 80% of India's population, 80% of India's population still lives in mud and biomass-based buildings. Bamboo. You'll be surprised if I tell you something. Bamboo is an extremely viable building materials as far as residential buildings are concerned. It's disaster resilient, hugely disaster resilient. And mind you, Kerala actually stands in a very vulnerable disaster area, zone 3 as they call it. Anytime an intense earthquake can happen. I always tell to my friends that death is actually under our foot. Death is just there under our foot. And an intense earthquake happens, a dense country like India, a dense state like Trivandrum, dense state like Kerala, and a dense city like Trivandrum, the toll can be very, very huge. Unlike Latur or Puj or Anjar or Uttarakhand or Kashmir, the tone can be very, I don't want to go to this, but these are some of the technologies that I use. Rat trap board, very simple. There's nothing very technical about it. That is what I've been trying to reach out to people all the time. Same kind of bricks. Only thing is that you put bricks on edge. What do you gain? More strength? Believe me, more strength, more durability, insulation, cost effectiveness, less cement, less sand, and the rest of it. Why can't we use it? More insulating. In a tropical country like India, we need such interventions. Rubber wood joinery. Rubber wood, as you know, as you all of you know, especially from the state, after 25 years, we slaughter it away. That's how it's being called. You just cut it down. After you take out all the latex from the tree, you just cut it down and slaughter it. You can bring it back to a vocabulary by impregnating it with some toxic, the arsenic fluoride, and taking out the moisture from that. It becomes as hard, as durable as teak wood. This is what I just want to run through this, because this is what's happening in our own premises, RLM tribal. One draftsman in the revenue department, he took out a sheet, a topo sheet as they call it, took a scale and a pencil and divided the whole community like this. 6,000 houses. Just took a topo sheet, took a scale and a pencil, drew it like this. 6,000 houses. I've been involved with tribal housing for a long time. I know about the social issues, the rest of it. When I went in for the first time, there were actually, some people were already settling in, and I saw an old man climbing up a rubber tree. You actually, when you look at the rubber tree, you tap it on the bottom part of the stem, you cut a slot and then you take the latex out. That's how you do it, and you have seen it. This man was on the top of this thing, and he was trying to put notches there. They were taking latex from every conceivable things, putting it out. They don't know what sustainability was all about. They want to make money out right there, and they were putting notches right at the top of this thing. And these are real pictures. Look at the connectivity. Absolutely no connectivity. Connectivity, knowledge connectivity, physical connectivity, access to this thing. Nothing was there. This is how the buildings are being built. But still, this is what makes me happy. And this is what makes me forward looking. In spite of the carelessness of the government and the ruling classes, these people are beginning to build smokeless chulas, energy efficient smokeless chulas. They are harvesting water with whatever little things. Towel, they are harvesting water, rainwater harvesting. These are very positive signs for a population like India. And I was asked to prepare a kind of an alternate design for this thing. This is what I did. And this was the image. I'll just go back to that a little later. I mean, can anybody help me with this presentation? I have a video with me. These are some of the buildings that I built. Just for this thing, before you go to that, this is the largest earth building in the world. The largest earth building in the world, which measures around 600,000 square feet, built entirely in mud. You must be looking at this color and wondering whether this is mud. Our mud is reddish brown. This is the pale yellow colored mud in Bangladesh. The largest earth building in the world, measuring around 600,000 square feet. And a few buildings that I built for the disasters, and the rest of the colleges. Ameti for Rahul Gandhi, the handicraft centers that I built, bamboo centers, and the rest of it. I'll just finish my presentation by showing a short clipping. This is my proposal for an alternate this thing for a tribal settlement.